Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of The Academics. I'm your host, Dr. David Spiceland, and a happy Halloween to all of you from those of us here at The Academics. To start the show, we'll be discussing a little bit of broadcast history. I love history. Nobody else does, but I do. And if we view Halloween as a time for fun, scares, and chills, a special Halloween, pre-Halloween, October 30th, 1938, the nation faced a wave of fear, all due to one guy. In fact, my copy here says an innocent radio broadcast, but Orson Welles was never innocent.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a grave announcement to make. Incredible as it may seem, both the observations of science and the evidence of our eyes lead to the inescapable assumption that those strange beings who landed in the Jersey farmlands tonight are the vanguard of an invading army from the planet Mars.
When this happened, October 30th, 1938, there were a lot of things that happened that caused the War of the Worlds to be so scary. The show itself was supposed to be, at least supposed to sound like a real broadcast. And what happened was they kept having these bulletins.
Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt our program of dance music to bring you a special bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News.
We have received a request from the State Militia of Trenton to place at their disposal our entire broadcasting facilities. In view of the gravity of the situation, and believing that radio has a responsibility to serve in the public interest at all times, we are turning over our facilities to the State Militia at Trenton.
The battle which took place tonight at Grover Mills has ended in one of the most startling defeats ever suffered by an army in modern times. 7,000 men armed with rifles and machine guns pitted against the single fighting machine of the invaders from Mars. 120 known survivors. The rest strewn over the battle area from Grover's Mill to Plainsboro, crushed and trampled to death under the metal feet of the monster, or burned to cinders by its heat ray.
People ask, could something like this happen today? And I think my personal answer would be yes. I mean, look at what people do with personal media, with cell phones. We all get a diversity of material. We're never quite sure if it's real or not. So maybe the War of the Worlds is a warning to us today to be on our guide. And in fact, something to where it can kind of guide us into thinking about here's how we're not going to behave. But it is something that still we think about today. There's a rule, an FCC rule that says that radio stations are not supposed to conduct hoaxes. That's because of the War of the Worlds. And there's also some things even today. If you go to New York City, I was there about a year ago, and if you go to 485 Madison Avenue, that's the same building where the War of the Worlds came out of. It's a completely different building today. I went by it, tried to get upstairs, and I don't know why, but they wouldn't let me up there. But I'd love to walk the hallways and to see what's left of that particular place. So we're going to come back in a few minutes, and we're going to look at pagan culture right here on campus, and a peek into the pagan traditions that formed the foundation of what we today celebrate as Halloween. And we'll be right back.
You are listening to a CBS presentation of Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on the Air in an original dramatization of The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. The performance will continue after a brief intermission. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Put the keys down, Kevin.
But I'm going to drive home.
There are several warning signs present that you shouldn't be driving.
My text-to-emoji ratio has gotten a little out of hand.
A little?
Yep, I'm definitely going to call a ride home.
Hey, welcome back to this week's episode of The Academics. Halloween is a holiday rooted deeply in pagan beliefs and traditions. And to talk to us about paganism, we have with us Logan Riley and Kai Green. Both are members of Appalachian State University's very own Pagan Student Association. Good to have you with us.
It's good to be here.
Glad to be here too.
Well, I guess the first question would be, what is paganism?
So paganism itself is an umbrella term that essentially encompasses any non-Abrahamic religion that chooses to define itself that way. So you have Wicca is typically the most well-known pagan religion, but then you also have the Reconstructionist religions like Hellenismos, which is Greek Reconstruction, and Chemeticism, which is Egyptian, and you have Ossetry, which is Norse Reconstruction, and then there's many, many more.
Obviously, there's a lot of perceptions of pagans and paganism. What do you think is one of the perceptions that's just, in your opinion, just not accurate?
Well, we don't sacrifice goats on the regular, that's one.
Okay.
Another really important note about paganism, and it's about how do you define paganism? And honestly, it comes down to each individual religion or belief system chooses to identify as paganism, and some choose not to, which you have hoodoo and others that choose not to use the word paganism and therefore are not part of that umbrella.
I guess one of the questions that does come up sometimes, and is become a little less frequent but still does come up, is the question about Satan worship. It's really the wrong question to be asking, because most people who practice paganism follow religions that have pantheons of specific deities, and those religions and those pantheons, Satan doesn't exist because he's not part of that pantheon, right? He belongs to the Judeo-Christian world. So to lump Satan worshipers in with paganism is often just logical fallacy.
Did paganism have much to do with Halloween, with that kind of activity that every October 31st, kids love to celebrate?
Yes, definitely. There are a lot of different roots of different religions that have kind of continued to today's Halloween. Do you want to speak on that?
Paganism itself, as the way that we know it, the term today, didn't really come about until around the 1950s. However, Samhain, which is the Celtic festival for what is now known today as Halloween, originated as essentially a festival, like a harvest festival, like the end of the harvest festival, to be like, okay, harvest is over, the winter is starting, and it was also believed to be the beginning of the new year. So, and you see that in Wicca because they still celebrate it as the beginning of the new year, and on that day it's thought that the veil between this world and the world of the dead is at its thinnest, and that the dead walk amongst us on that night. And so on those nights, there would be bonfires, but then people would also dress up because the dead would be walking amongst them and going to different houses and sometimes singing in exchange for gifts to essentially get gifts for their ancestors who were no longer able to get them. And that's kind of where the trick-or-treating thing that we do today originated. But the whole point of costumes was so that you understood who was dead and who wasn't. So if you were in a costume, you were assumed to be alive and not an ancestral spirit.
And that brings up another issue. How would a pagan view death?
That definitely depends on the religion, because every religion and belief system has a different view of the afterlife. Some kind of similar, some very, very different.
Is there a universal concept of that? There is another veil after this life? Or is that pretty common for pagans?
For most of the Reconstruction religions within paganism, it's fairly common. Reincarnation is also a very, very common belief amongst pagans. It really does depend on the religion. So, for example, Chemeticism, which is the Egyptian Reconstruction religion, believes that there is a day of judgment after you die, and that your heart is weighed. And depending on how your heart is weighed, it determines where each part of your soul goes, because the Egyptians believed in a 5-part soul.
Now, what about, do pagans get together and have services like Judeo-Christian, Islamic? Is there any kind of activity like that?
It definitely comes down again to the separation of which religion are we talking here. Some have offerings that are done alone. Sometimes offerings are done in group, or libations done in group, or asking that a god or a goddess join you and have a celebration of them. that's fairly common in different religions and can be done in groups or done alone.
Yeah, one of the biggest, I think, differences between just pagan religions in general and Abrahamic religions. So in Abrahamic religions, obviously you have sermons and you have church services and stuff like that. We don't have things like that in paganism because the role of clergy within most pagan religions is to facilitate ritual. So it's not about telling you how to live, it's about helping set up a ritual to serve the purpose that you're looking to serve. Because not all pagans are familiar or able to do rituals, so you really need clergy to be able to help facilitate those rituals.
Now, the pagan society here on campus, do you have activities, things that you do? Is it something that's unique to the individual or to the group?
Okay, so we are both members of the Pagan Student Association here on campus. And we do a wide variety of events during the year. We have Halloween Ball, we have Fairy Fest in the spring, we have Divination Fair, and also we usually go to Pagan Pride, which is out in the Raleigh area. It's a really fantastic place to go where you can learn, you can buy goods, other things, crafts, different stuff. But generally, we have meetings every Thursday, and that is an educational resource for the breadth of different knowledge that different people bring to the table in this wonderful club that we have. At times, as a kind of like some of us from the club, not associated with the club, would on our own go and like perform a libation to a deity of choice.
And explain a libation.
Okay, so that's us getting together in a given area, and we would talk about and learn about this deity before like asking that deity join us, and then we would kind of honor them, like gather something alcoholic usually of their taste, that because throughout history and through different documents we can source like Persephone, pomegranates. I am so sorry, but with Persephone, pomegranates, and other things that deities are recorded to have either an affinity for, a connection with, and then like have those items out and kind of imagery of this deity, pour wine and kind of joyously kind of welcome them with singing, like in Judeo-Christian churches, etc., of like having a choir, like sometimes singing, sometimes chanting of different variety of things, and then just from there experiencing what this deity is like. And if you have a chance to like speak with the deity, then that's cool too.
Yeah, one of the biggest differences is that all pagan religions are orthopraxic. So being orthopraxic means that it's more important that the practice you do is correct. What you believe is less important than how you practice. So there's not a whole lot of like sermons being given because it doesn't, like, how you believe isn't important. It's the actions that you take in the world that matter. So usually if like we're getting together to do like libation or ritual, which is really just a libation on a bigger scale, it's to just simply honor the presence of the gods. It's not to promote or advocate for anything. It's simply just the practical experience of a deity.
You mentioned that in your, if I can call it a fellowship, that sometimes is like herding cats. That there's so much in the way of different views.
Yeah, it is 100% on a large scale herding cats, and also in our club as well, the Pagan Student Association, it is definitely herding cats. And that's comes down to everyone and on a larger scale, different religions and belief systems have their own priorities and have their own wants, and getting everyone together for like the Raleigh Pagan Pride is it's a massive undertaking. You can't define everyone by the same set of principles, the same set of rules or guidelines, and so getting people in the same room at the same time to talk about the same topic is often
pretty tough to do?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, all right. I think that we have talked about some things that, frankly, I'm learning in the process. And again, one more thing. Do you have anything to add to what we've talked about?
we've talked about quite a bit.
We have.
Just stay open. Honestly, just keep your mind open to what's out there, to what knowledge you might come across, and always learn.
Okay, all right. Well, that's about all the time that we've got for this. We thank you both for coming in today, and we hope that we've given you, the audience, a new understanding of paganism and encourage you to keep the history of Halloween in mind as you celebrate this year. And that's about the time we've got for today. I'm Dave Spiceland. We hope you'll join us next time here on The Academics.